Hello everyone, welcome back to Psyched About Life, where we talk about psychology, life, growth, and personal development. Today's video is all about childhood wounds. Now, we're talking about childhood wounds because a lot like our other videos, it's all about inner healing and working on ourself and self-growth and development. And this may not be an easy topic for some of you. Of course, it's not always easy to face our inner self and our childhood trauma or childhood wounds, of course, but it's very necessary, and we're going to get into why it's necessary to look into our childhood wounds and trauma. It's very important also because we want to know why we do what we do, why we think about what we think about, and where it stems from. It's always good to see the place of origin of where our trauma stems from. And a lot like our other videos where we talked about the id, ego, superego, we talked about shadow work, attachment styles, a lot of it has to do with, and I'm so sorry about this lighting, it's a little shaky today, but I really love making content, so I hope you don't mind the little wrap I got going on. It's a Sunday, so I just felt like making and posting some content. So where was I? It's really good to do wound mapping, and we're going to talk about that as well. Wound mapping and how it affects us in our adulthood or young adulthood, however old you are. And I got the idea from this shadow work journal. So a lot like my other videos where we talk about shadow work and I kind of introduce Carl Jung and Freud, this one really helps us look at our shadow because that's one of the archetypes of personality. As you definitely have watched my videos, I'm not trying to pinpoint anyone, but it's really good to grow from our shadow and unveil some of the stuff that is in our unconscious, subconscious, whatever you want to call it, stuff that's hidden. And we want to bring that to conscious awareness or the light, right? Opposite of shadow. And we're going to get into the wounds, and I just thought this was a really cool video because I feel like it'll help us and it'll definitely be content worthy for my channel because a lot of it has to deal with healing. There's a lot of stuff from childhood that we maybe, especially me, maybe don't really understand or don't talk about often, and it still affects us, and that's key. It still affects us, so that's why it's really important to talk about this stuff. Before we talk about wounds, we're going to talk about childhood trauma, and I know the word is definitely used in a lot of serious scenarios. Childhood trauma really is about a child not feeling safe, not feeling loved, not feeling recognized as they grow up, and they can greatly affect how they view the world, how they view themselves, and their relationships. So Carl Jung, there's a quote in here that I really love, and it talks about how we see the stuff that we keep in our shadow in our interactions and in other people. We necessarily project our insecurities and stuff that we keep hidden. If they're not healed, they're going to be in the reality in the world around us, in other people. We're going to project our shadow onto other people, and that's not good. And we want to grow from this. We want to experience self-growth, rediscovery. We want to figure out the bottom line of like, why am I thinking these things? Why am I doing these things? I want to be better. And it has to start somewhere. It has to start with childhood. And so that's a little bit about childhood trauma. Now we're going to go into childhood wound mapping. So there's 4 wounds in our inner childhood wound mapping. There's 4. There's abandonment wound, there's trust wound, there's guilt wound, and neglect wound. Now all of these you could resonate with, but you could also resonate with one, or you could resonate with a few. You don't necessarily need to resonate with all of them, but whatever resonates with you, take bit by bit. You could have one of each. So just keep that in mind. So we're going to start off with abandonment wound. Now this is from my book, not my book, but a book that it really caught my eye, and I love it. I love it so much. The Shadow Work Journal. Got it on the TikTok shop. And it's so cute because you can do a declaration of intent, and that just keeps you kind of secured in your trust and your confidence. And I feel like that's so important to do like a little consent or a declaration. I think that's really beneficial. Just like the word itself, abandonment is when someone feels left out. So since this is about childhood, it's when a child feels left out, when they feel this emotional abandonment in which a significant person, usually as a parent or caregiver, discards you, dismisses you, does not acknowledge you, does not validate your feelings, and so you internalize that. If you don't have that conversation and have that clarity, you internalize that, and it carries with you throughout your life, and then it shows in your relationships and your views of others around you. Other characteristics of abandonment wound involve fears of being left out, hates being alone, codependency, threatens to leave someone in a relationship, normally attracts emotionally unavailable people. So that's just a few to name, but of course there's a couple of others. And of course, with the negative comes the positive. So ways that we can help our abandonment wound is by writing a letter to the object of your abandonment, whether it's literally or just journaling this. You can tell him or her all of your feelings of sadness, anger, rejection, confusion. It really just helps like release, because think of feelings as like a river. It flows. So you don't want to keep that stuff bottled up. You want to release that. So that's what journaling and writing with intention does. It really releases that stuff. You can also let yourself feel, because it's good to acknowledge your feelings, especially since you have never felt like people acknowledged your feelings before. So it's good for you to be the one to do so. Next is guilt wound. Guilt wound consists of feeling sorry or bad, doesn't like to ask for help, ask for things, uses guilt to manipulate because, of course, that was modeled for them in their childhood, is afraid to set boundaries, and normally attracts people who make them feel guilty. So a guilt wound could really stem from negative early life events or beliefs from childhood where shame and guilt were present. Shame can come from the feeling that you are failing to meet expectations. It can impact your coping skills and can result in you forming unhealthy habits. Ways that we can heal from this guilt wound is by mindfulness, gentleness, and connectedness. So it's really important for us to be non-judgmental with ourselves, especially since we felt judgmental from the people in our childhood. We want to take extra care of ourselves, acknowledge our feelings. See, each of these wounds are very much intertwined. So you're going to acknowledge your feelings. You're going to be gentle with yourself. Use nice, kind words when you're thinking about yourself and looking at yourself in the mirror. Use that as an exercise to really practice good, positive words and attributes. You can journal. I always find journaling as a way of getting your words out and speaking them into existence and into the universe. And once they're out there, it gives that belief, it gives that power. And I feel like words have so much power, and it's really us practicing those habits of getting them out there and starting to believe them. So writing them is one way to start that process and connect with yourself and your feelings. The third one is the trust wound, and I feel like it's pretty self-explanatory. It's just about being afraid of being hurt. That could have been a traumatic experience, or just never feeling that safety net and that security with your family, especially during childhood. You don't trust them yourself. You find ways not to trust other people. You feel insecure and seek a lot of external validation outside of yourself and from other people. And you normally attract people who don't feel safe. And that's usually a trend. It's like you're attracting these people because you're projecting your wounds, and that's what you are familiar with from childhood. And it really interferes with you feeling vulnerable and safe with other people around you. Again, doing shadow work and journaling in general can really help you uncover, especially therapy can help you uncover what is causing you to not trust people, where it stems from, and I feel like just uncovering that stuff will really help you in the long run. So this neglect wound from childhood really looks at struggling to let things go, have low self-worth, gets angry easily, fears of being vulnerable, struggles to say no, represses emotions, and attracts people who normally don't appreciate them or make them feel seen. And this can also show up in adulthood from losing a job, having a hard time re-entering the job market. So even in adulthood, this can also develop this wound, which kind of makes it a little confusing, because it's like these wounds do develop in childhood but also could reestablish themselves in adulthood. Ways that we can grow from this neglect wound is just by prioritizing ourselves, prioritizing our needs, replenishing ourselves, because since we feel like other people don't see us as a priority, it's time for us to make ourselves a priority. And I know that seems easier said than done, but if you feel like your happiness has to come from other people, that's already a red flag. You want your happiness to come from yourself. So I think therapy's awesome, I think journaling's awesome, and really those two seem to be the answer for each of these wounds. I mean, it's really good to try to see the origin. I know I sound like a broken record, but also see and uncover all those things, because they've been repressed all throughout our lives, or most of our lives. It's okay to feel sadness. It's okay to feel fear and anger. I know it didn't feel comfortable in childhood, but now's the time more than ever to feel those feelings and let it flow like water. And that's really my message, even though I'm not a preacher. I feel like I'm preaching, but that's really my message for you today. This was a really short video, but I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe if you're enjoying my content. Comment down below if you have any other suggestions. I'm very open, and I love seeing any suggestions that you may have. So thank you so much.